Hi. I think that my computer's being weird, so I don't even know if this is gonna work or not, but whatever. I have like an hour to kill before I have to go to class, so figured I'd shoot a quick video. Um, so today what I wanted to talk about is I'm still sort of trying to ease into like more controversial topics, so I figured I'd do something sort of fun today. Um, I wanted to talk about like female empowerment. And like not like rah rah go women, let's kill all the guys type of female empowerment. I'm talking about like I want to, explain some things that happened in history that is like, whoa, chicks rule. Like what? I didn't know this cuz it's all like a lot of history is men dominating women and you know, that whole thing. So I just sort of wanted to take some examples of, you know, women in history who, and not like specific women, but like sort of groups of women, I guess it would be. Anyway, so this topic sort of started because in one of my classes, we just finished studying the French Revolution, which is a super cool topic, and I'm really glad I got to learn about it because it applies to a lot of things that happened in history, before and after, especially after, because it sort of changed the way that, ideas were communicated, and it sort of created that whole, radical ideas type of movement that has plagued us ever since. But so we were reading this handout, and it was talking about women and their role in the revolution, and they had like a significantly larger role than a lot of people thought they did, because for a lot of the revolution, the men were off fighting the Austrians and the Prussians, and the women were at home doing revolution stuff. And so it was talking about how at one point, there was the Women's March on Versailles and like all sorts of stuff like that. And because the women were sort of the main caretakers of families, they were the ones who were most affected by the rising costs and by the food shortages and whatever. But they also, there was this, what the reading was about was how when the men were off fighting, the women armed themselves with things like, kitchen knives, and gave like, fire pokers and ladles to their kids, and said, if our men lose and we get invaded, we're going to make our last stand here, we're going to die fighting for this. And I mean, not only is that super badass, but the women didn't get anything out of the revolution. Like nothing. They got absolutely nothing out of the revolution, and they were the ones fighting for it, which is so dumb. But that whole taking a last stand type of thing totally reminded me of some stuff that I've learned about a couple of ancient cultures. Are they ancient? If they're around during Roman times, is that ancient? Yeah, because it's ancient Rome, obviously. So, one thing that it sort of reminded me of is the whole last stand thing. When the barbaric tribes were coming down from the north and meeting Roman soldiers, you have them coming down from the way up high, coming down to fight Roman soldiers, and these barbaric tribes were they'd come down and they'd meet the Romans on the battlefield and whatever, and the women would stand behind the men and cheer them on, and shout threats and stuff like that. And if the men on their side retreated, like, oh no, the Romans are kicking our butts, we're gonna run away now. If they retreated, the women would be waiting behind the battlefield to kill them, because, in their society it was like, if, you win or you die, there's no retreat, there's no surrender, there's no giving up, you fight until you die or you win. And so if these men even attempted to flee the battle, they'd have women waiting for them with swords, and the women would kill the men and then kill their children and then kill themselves, because, like, that's how they did it. Like, win or die. And if you're going to run away, then you're going to die. And we're going to kill you and then kill ourselves. Like, I mean, that seems a little bit extreme, but that's pretty cool. Like, the women are sitting there, like, shouting threats to men, like, don't you dare lose and don't run away or I'll be forced to kill you, And, like, they actually did that. Like, if somebody tried to run away, they would just massacre their men, their husbands, their sons, and, like, and then kill their children and then kill themselves. That's how it was. Like, what? And then another instance of something similar to that is in the steppe tribes, which I'm sure I've talked about before. You've got the Huns, you've got the Turks, you've got the Mongols, which are, they're some of the youngest tribes. And actually, I think the Xiongnu are actually the same as the Huns, because the Xiongnu went and, like, totally plagued China and then disappeared for like 100 years back into the steppe, and then came out on the other side as the Huns, because that's how because they didn't communicate much between each other, like, besides, like, trading and stuff like that. So that's kind of funny. But in these steppe tribes, and, like, the steppe tribes were plaguing Europe and Asia between, like, what was it, like 1300 BCE to, like, 500 CE, something like that. don't hold me to that. I'm trying to remember. Something I listened to months and months ago. So, they were around for a long time, and, like, these steppe tribes, they lived exactly the same way in 1300 BCE as they did in 500 CE, They had their camps, they had their horses, they were mostly cavalry, shooting arrows on horseback. And, I'll have to do, like, a separate video just on the steppe tribes, because they are really cool. Like, I mean, they're awful and they're vicious, and, like, they killed millions and millions and millions of people. I mean, the Mongols alone killed millions of people. Like, they were some hardcore murderers. Like, they invented genocide practically. Like, they are terrible, awful. But they're also really interesting to learn about. I mean, like, because their culture is just unlike any other that has ever been. But anyway, I digress. So the cool thing about the women in these steppe tribes is that in a lot of these tribes, they fought alongside the men, These people are raised on horseback, shooting arrows, They could do things on horseback with a bow and arrow that seems physically impossible today. And, like, it sucks that we, can't see that. I mean, they're still over in Mongolia, and, they're still raised on horses, shooting arrows and stuff like that. But it's not like it was back then. I mean, it's still incredible by our standards. But it's not the way it was back then. And, when you see something from nowadays and, like, just totally blows your mind, and then, you think, and this is, like, not nearly as good as what it used to be. Like, that's just, like, but, so in a lot of these steppe tribes, the women would fight beside the men, They were raised on horseback, too. They were just as capable. They were just as hardened. They were just as vicious. And in a lot of tribes, a woman would not be allowed to marry until she had killed an enemy in battle. how cool is that? Like, I'm sorry, I don't care if you love this guy, I don't care if you want to marry him, you haven't killed somebody yet, so get on that. Like, sorry, can't marry anyone until, you know, you've killed someone. And like, how cool is that? Like, you know, women fighting alongside the men, and this was in like, what, 1300 BCE? Like, that's awesome. You know, how come we haven't heard more about this? But, like, I just think that's so cool, and I think I'll definitely have to do a video sometime about the steppe tribes, because they are just so cool. And, like, I mean, so cool. And I've always sort of shied away from the Asian histories because it's so confusing, and like there's so many names and like dynasties and like the whole culture like is so hard to learn about because there's so much of it, you know, and it just seems like really overwhelming. So I've always sort of shied away from it. But the steppe tribes are sort of like kind of a mixture of European and Asian history because you know, they were terrors to both Asia and Europe. So it's sort of like dipping my feet in, you know, easing into the Asian history, because I've learned a lot about European history, and there's a lot of history to learn. There's a lot more out there, but I just sort of wanted to, you know, this is going to end up being my shortest video. I just wanted to sort of talk about how awesome chicks are and like some cool things that they did. So I hope that that was good, and I will probably do something super controversial that will make a lot of people hate me next time.